This is not a battle, but an execution carried out in absolute silence. 3:07 a.m. The Persian Gulf. Space is torn apart by an invisible force hurtling at a devastating speed. On the other side of the horizon, Iran's defense network suddenly explodes with an error code and goes dark. Everything is plunged into darkness in an instant. The scythe is at their throat, but the prey hasn't yet realized what's happening. The U.S. has just delivered a blow Iran didn't see coming. The technological execution begins. Iran is pursuing a bold strategy, turning the Strait of Hormuz into a geopolitical lever. By exerting pressure on this vital oil artery, Iran believes the U.S. will have to be extremely cautious, as any misstep could send the global economy into turmoil due to skyrocketing oil prices. 3:10 a.m. The U.S. Navy has not fallen into that trap. The supercarrier USS Gerald R has anchored in safe waters off the Arabian Sea. It demonstrates the power of a $13 billion fortress through its new generation EMALS electromagnetic launch system, enabling the rapid launch of aircraft. It is through this system that the Ford deploys its long-range eyes and ears, the E-2D and EA-18G Growler. They leverage their long-range capabilities to monitor the battlefield, keeping the massive U.S. fortress out of the enemy's reach. 3:15 a.m. From the Ford's escort formation, the destroyer USS Carney quietly breaks away. The EM Con Alpha order is issued. All radars are shut down, transforming the ship into a silent electronic ghost. Weaving through minefields, the Carney stealthily approaches Carr Island at a distance of just 120 nautical miles. At this moment, the ship was a loaded gun, waiting only for the fateful data stream to pull the trigger. 3:45 a.m. Iran immediately launched a counterattack. Coastal missile launchers were activated, and a swarm of high-speed boats surrounded strategic straits. Iranian state television declared firmly, the Persian Gulf will be the grave of the aggressor. Tensions spread globally. Global oil prices surged by 9% in just 2 hours. The world held its breath as the two barrels of guns were pressed against each other's temples. But what they didn't expect was the U.S. was about to launch an unthinkable strike. 3:55 a.m. The operation began in absolute cold silence. This was the first step in the U.S. chain of destruction, blinding the enemy from the inside out. While U.S. cyber units activated a pre-planted logic bomb, causing Iran's internal control servers to enter an endless reboot loop, the Boeing EA-18G Growler began its attack from the outside. This is a double-blind strike. Cyber attacks create chaos within the lines, while electronic suppression screams down from the sky. The result, Iran's integrated defense system is no longer a network. It is merely a collection of isolated, terrified outposts. High above, at an altitude of 500 miles, the KH-11 reconnaissance satellite locks its optical system on the coastline of Carr Island. It shares battlefield truth with the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye early warning aircraft using Link 16, a high-speed tactical data exchange network. This digital picture is transmitted directly to the USS Carney. The Carney does not need to activate its own radar. It doesn't want to. By maintaining passive mode, the USS Carney remains an invisible ghost on the water. But its missile launch tubes are preloaded with 100% accurate coordinates provided by its brothers in the sky. Iran realized they were being digitally exposed. They launched a desperate counterattack, activating maximum jamming power and releasing a swarm of drones, hundreds of small UAVs to conceal critical assets. But the E-2D's AAPI-9 radar is built to handle this. It filters out junk noise with the precision of a surgeon, separating decoys and real threats. All coordinates remain locked. Carney's gun barrel is now pressed against the enemy's temple. No margin for error, no way out. 3:50 a.m. Communications have been jammed. Now the U.S. Navy is taking control of the frequency spectrum from the USS Gerald R. The EA-18G Growler aircraft launched a high-intensity electronic attack. Think of this aircraft as a military version of the Sony WH-1000XM5 noise-canceling headphones, but instead of blocking out the neighbor's music, it's screaming across every frequency the Iranian military uses to stay alive. Iran's electronic warfare units fought back fiercely. They activated a massive network of decoys, fake transmitters appearing on U.S. radar screens as thousands of phantom targets. They began frequency hopping at breakneck speed, desperately searching for a clear channel to communicate. But the Growler is a predator on the radio waves. Its computers analyze and jam Iranian signals in an instant, keeping the skies digitally pitch black. Under the protective umbrella of this electronic silence, the USS Carney finally unleashed its fury.
From the Mark 41 vertical launch system, a swarm of Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles fired. These are Sekhming flying monsters to evade Iran's coastal observation post. The Tomahawk missiles dropped to a terrifying altitude, just 50 feet, hugging the Earth's curvature to remain invisible to manual observation from the cliffs of Carr Island. The moment the Tomahawk missiles left their launchers on the USS Carney, control was transferred directly to the F-35C pilots flying overhead. At this point, the USS Carney shifted from the role of shooter to fire support provider, handing over full coordination to those closest to the target with the most comprehensive view. Overseeing that chaos is the squadron of F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters, Lockheed Martin. These flying supercomputers aren't just there to assist, they are the conductors of this symphony. Using the F-35C's Link 16 connection, the pilots literally guide the Tomahawk missiles as they fly. When the F-35C's sensors detect a new Iranian anti-aircraft fire network emerging ahead, the pilot immediately reprograms the Tomahawk's flight path, steering the missiles to avoid danger zones in real time. The sky side is torn apart by thousands of electronic pulses and anti-aircraft artillery shells, but the U.S. mission remains under absolute control. The Tomahawk missiles danced through the gaps in Iran's barrage, guided by invisible hands from the Ford's most stealthy jets. The F-35C pilot adjusted the heads-up display and calmly reported, "Target acquired," through the defense grid, preparing for the finishing blow. 4:20 a.m. While the fleet was demonstrating its strength on the surface, a Virginia-class nuclear submarine had been secretly stationed at the bottom of the bay for weeks. Motionless as a rock, it used passive sonar to detect even the slightest mechanical movement without emitting any signals. Working in close coordination is the MH-60R Seahawk helicopter taking off from the USS Carney. The Seahawk continuously drops sonobuoys into the water, creating a digital surveillance net beneath the ocean surface. All acoustic data is transmitted directly to the Virginia-class submarine via the CDL link, establishing a real-time map of submerged targets. However, Iran deployed the Kilo-class submarine, dubbed the Black Hole, to counter the threat. Exploiting the complex terrain of the rocky trench and varying ocean currents, the Kilo submarine shut down its engines completely, lying motionless on the seabed to evade detection. This is why U.S. sensors were unable to detect it during the early stages of the operation. 4:35 a.m. As the sonar buoy perimeter closed in, the Kilo realized its position had been compromised. With no way out, it suddenly activated its electric motors, surging up to periscope depth to launch a daring attack. A salvo of heavy Test 71 torpedoes left the launch tubes, targeting the U.S. escort fleet directly. Perfect control number to Black Hole had just awakened right beneath the fleet. The torpedoes had left the tubes. 4:40 a.m. Just as the U.S. Navy focused its attention on the seabed, the entire ground and air battlefield suddenly turned upside down. Iran's Babur 373 mobile air defense systems, which had shut down their radars and hidden in concrete bunkers all night to evade anti-radar missiles, now simultaneously awakened. Coordinating with the Babur 373 was a wave of mixed attacks comprising Shahed drones and C-802 anti-ship missiles launched from mobile coastal launchers. The Aegis radar on the USS Carney went into overload for the first few seconds due to the overwhelming number of targets. By using backup radio frequencies, Iran partially succeeded in jamming U.S. communication systems, shot down 2 Tomahawk missiles, and forced the MH-60R Seahawk to perform continuous evasive maneuvers against anti-aircraft fire. Inside the Carney's Combat Information Center, the voice of the operations officer rang out with tension. "We've been outmaneuvered, Bob. Babur 373 is locking onto the fleet. We've lost the tactical overview." For the first time since the start of the operation, the U.S. found itself in a truly dire situation. Iran had not only survived, but also seized the initiative, forcing the U.S. to launch a final, unthinkable strike to salvage the situation. 4:45 a.m. Facing a suffocating encirclement from all sides, the U.S. Navy did not panic. They immediately activated a contingency plan calculated down to the second. A multi-domain counterattack network erupted instantly, transforming the fleet into a unified and deadly fighting force. Clearing the way for the counteroffensive, the EA-18G Growler aircraft, still maintaining a presence from the USS Ford, immediately switched the ALQ-99 jamming equipment to barrage jamming mode at full destructive intensity. A massive wall of electronic jamming was erected instantly, completely overwhelming the radio frequency spectrum of the Babur 373 system, stripping the enemy's missiles of their guidance capabilities just as they prepared to fire. Taking advantage of the newly created electronic gap, the F-35C Lightning IIs flying with the squadron from the USS Ford executed a spectacular tactical pivot. They switched their mission to suppression of enemy air defenses. From their internal stealth weapon base, AGM-88 Harm Hunter missiles were launched, striking the Babur 373 radar signal source with absolute precision, decapitating Tehran's air defense system in a single blow. While the skies were being suppressed, deep beneath the ocean, Virginia-class nuclear submarines simultaneously fired to eliminate the threat from the Black Hole. A heavy Mark 48 torpedo carrying 650 pounds of explosives left its launch tube, locking onto the engine noise of the Kilo-class submarine. The explosion generated a terrifying shockwave that snapped the Iranian submarine's hull under water pressure.
Tehran's shark officially became prey for America's killer whale. To provide outer perimeter protection for the attacking forces, the Aegis combat system aboard the USS Carney springs into action. Leveraging real-time data shared directly from the aircraft above via Link 16, the Carney activates SM-6 missiles, sweeping away a swarm of Shahhed long-range attack drones in the sky, reducing them to harmless metal debris falling into the sea. But it didn't stop there. The Tomahawk Block 5 missiles already in flight were also reprogrammed by the F-35C pilots mid-air. Instead of targeting the now empty bunkers, they abruptly changed course, plunging straight into the C-802 anti-ship missile launchers that had just emerged on the shore.
Finally, the F-35C glided over the last remaining reinforced command bunker and dropped a 2,000-pound JDAM satellite-guided bomb, piercing through 12 feet of reinforced concrete to crush any final resistance. The chaos that had threatened to overwhelm the fleet was quelled in just a few short minutes. The oil defense arsenal on Carr Island is now nothing but smoldering piles of rubble. Yet, miraculously, the oil infrastructure remains perfectly intact. The flow of black gold continues under the absolute control of the U.S. Navy. Iran's defense system was caught off guard by the U.S. Navy's unimaginable speed of response. Iran's arsenal is now nothing but a pile of ashes. But don't celebrate too soon, because the real storm has only just begun after this moment of silence. 5:30 a.m. As the sun rose over the Persian Gulf, the strategic reality became clear. 840,000 barrels of oil continued to flow through the Strait of Hormuz every hour. The global energy market remained stable. Despite threats, an economic disaster did not materialize. In less than a single night, the U.S. Navy had precisely neutralized Iran's ability to control the waters at the world's most critical maritime chokepoint. 6 a.m. Threat began a tactical retreat. To save face, Iranian state media broadcast footage of the successful completion of defensive exercises. They called it a victory. But satellites don't lie. The charred steel wrecks of the Bavar 373 gunboats and the Black Hole Kilo-class submarine lying on the seabed tell a completely different story. For Iran, this is the most costly strategic lesson in its history. As for the crews of the USS Gerald R. and USS Carney, it was simply another ordinary Tuesday at the office. Now the entire world is holding its breath, waiting for threat's next retaliatory move. Will they take a risk? Or have they finally realized they're playing a game with rules they no longer control? What do you think? Will Iran stay silent or take another reckless gamble? Leave a comment below. Like if you believe in the power of American technology, and subscribe so you don't miss the next unthinkable moves.